welcome to a brand new video, and we've got a very extremely juicy one today: how to start a social media marketing agency in 2021. Now, if you've watched a previous training on social media marketing agency, on how to start one, potentially on how to grow one, my promise to you is that this will be the most detailed video that you've watched up to now. All you gotta do is, it's gonna be a long one. You can probably see that I'm not sure how long I'm gonna go for, but there's quite a lot of slides, there's quite a lot of in-depth training on this video. So my recommendation to you is go ahead, get a pen, get a notebook, take a few notes, be engaged, get rid of distractions, and without further ado, let's get right into it. So, how to start a social media marketing agency in 2021. Here is all the stuff that we're gonna cover. Number one, what has changed? Number two, picking the right avenue. Number three, building a monopoly agency. What do I mean by that? I'll explain in just a bit. Number four, narrowing down into a sub niche. Five, picking a hybrid e-com service. Six, building an A team, not just any team, but an A team. And finally, signing e-com clients. So, first and foremost is a bit of a prelude. I'll talk about this and why this makes a lot of sense going forward. But a few things about what has changed, compared to last year, right? Because I didn't just say how to start a social media marketing agency, right? That's not the point of this video. The point of this video is how to start a social media marketing agency in 2021. So we need to be aware of the fact that, the current social landscape is different to what it used to be, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Okay? So what has changed? It's quite a lot, as you may be aware of. A lot has changed. A lot has happened in the past year. A lot has changed in the past year, and so a few things that we want to keep in mind is the impact that 2020 has had on this year, right? And the impact that 2020 will have had for the next 5 years. Okay? So the current social landscape has had a massive influence on the growth of e-commerce. As millions stayed at home, global e-commerce traffic hit a record-breaking 22 billion monthly visits in June 2020, and that is a Statista.com stat right there. Also, e-commerce has almost doubled in market cap in the past year and has grown more than in the past 10 years combined. So quite a lot of growth for e-commerce. And finally, moving with the times. From beginner brands looking to get a land grab, to physical stores and services realizing that they have to go online, otherwise they're pretty much out of business, to big brands going harder than ever as they realize the massive opportunity that is ahead of them with their e-com side. There's never been more demand for e-com growth. There's never been more demand for e-com growth, and that is one of the biggest assets to build. I'll talk about that in just a bit. One of the biggest assets to build right now, because everyone is looking for one thing as everything is shifting online from the beginner brands who are looking to get into the e-com space, right? And have maybe quite a bit of a budget to put into that e-com store, to the physical stores and services going online, to the big brands who were operating online, were killing it online, but are realizing I gotta go harder than ever and build this, build this $1 billion brand, right? So there's never been more demand for e-com growth, and the people who can conquer that are the people who are gonna win in this unprecedented landscape. But I'll come back to that in just a bit, because the first thing that we're gonna do is we wanna pick the right avenue. And what I mean by that is, what industry are we gonna operate in? Now, it can really boil down into two things, right? It can either be a traditional SMMA, okay, or it can be an e-commerce marketing agency. And to kind of compare the two, you can see that they're both two cameras, right? They're both two types of agencies, but one is way more. It actually applies for the modern times. Actually works for the modern times. The other one is cool to have it maybe at your home. Is a cool little artifact, but doesn't really get the job done in the most profitable, effective way possible. The other camera is literally the camera that I'm using to record this. Actually, I'm not too sure. I think it is. Don't quote me on that, because I'm not a camera expert, but the other camera gets the job done effectively. One of the best cameras in the market, right? And that is really the comparison, and that's really what the comparison between a traditional social media marketing agency servicing local businesses and an e-commerce marketing agency helping e-com brands scale to 7, 8, 9 figures actually looks like. So a bit about both, right? The old way of doing things, social media marketing agency, SMMA. What is this old way of doing things, and why does it not work anymore? Now, in most cases, the niche was mostly local businesses. So it could have been a restaurant, it could have been, dentist, it could have been real estate. It was all based on, it was all based around helping local businesses thrive, right? Now the service and the offer, basically what people would do is they would pick one service and disregard everything else, right? Agency owners would look at growth purely from a Facebook ad lens, right? They would build a Facebook ads agency for dentists, right? Or helping dentists, get more patients using Facebook ads, or helping, beauty salons get more clients using Google ads, right? And they'd be blinded to all the interconnected parts of a business that are responsible for growth. So they would, another thing is they don't have an irresistible offer, and there's really no distinction between their offer and their service, right? Their service is their offer. And what I mean by that is a service could be Facebook ads, right? The offer could be growth, profitable growth to 7 figures, right? That could be an offer. So in most cases, especially for social media marketing agency, the service was the offer. And what happens when you do that is there's really no distinction and no differentiation with other agencies, because other agencies are also offering the same service, right? And so what happens is you get a bunch of agencies who all look alike, right? And so you start a Facebook ads agency helping real estate clients, right? Cool, but get in the queue, because so have another 5,000 people, right, in the space. And so there's no much differentiation there. Result. Performance is not tangible because the KPI, the key performance indicator, what we're optimizing for, the result that we're trying to get for these clients is leads. Now, I'll talk about what a lead actually is, but understand that the performance is not tangible, right? And so when you tell a client, yeah, we're getting new great results, okay, cool, but I don't see any money in my bank account. It's a really hard way to explain the value of your service. Next, the message. It's not specific, right? Instead of seeking to understand a particular niche and speak their language, they will try to encompass and appeal to as many types of prospects, right? So a lot of people, even if they, the people that actually pick like a specific niche within local business, good for them, right? They will still struggle when it comes to the service and the offer, but at least they're doing a better job than the people who try to appeal to a wide range of different niches, right? Maybe they pick e-commerce as a whole, or maybe they pick, they'd be doing, dentists, restaurants, beauty salons, and a bunch of other local businesses, right? And so what happens then is if you don't have a very specific group of people that you're servicing, right, then you cannot tailor your message according to their pain points, right? Their limiting beliefs, their actually, their triggers, their goals and ambitions in life, right? And those are, those, I can assure you, those are very different depending on the type of prospect and the type of business that they run. Make sense? So that's the message. And the final thing is the point of difference. There's really no point of difference here, right? They've tried their best to fit in. So their mindset is, the mindset is instead of thinking, how can I, what are the ways that I can stand out? The mindset is, what are the ways that I can fit in, right? How can I copy what other people who are having success, how can I copy what they're doing, right? And so they've tried, they've tried their best to fit in, to copy what the top people were doing. And as a result, they struggle to cut through the noise. That is why, that's one of the reasons why, if you look at a lot of people who have a SMMA or social media marketing agency, they all look the same. Same website, same service, same outreach methods, same message templates, right? Same methods of acquisition, same platforms that they're using, same strategy. It's all the same, and it's crazy, right? It's crazy to think about. And what happens is the end user builds walls around that type of outreach, that type of approach. Why? Because everyone is doing it, right? And so it's not very effective. And so they struggle to cut through the noise. It's the reason why most agency owners never actually sign a client. And it's it's perplexing. It's tough to hear, but the simple reason is most, the simple fact is that most agency owners who start an agency do not ever sign a client. Now, if you do things the right way, that is pretty much inevitable. Signing a client is pretty much inevitable. And in this presentation, in this video, that is what we're going to be doing. Okay, so you're watching the right video, but understand that the old way of social media marketing agency does not really work, especially in the current landscape. Now, here are some, to really hone in on this fact is, these are some of the limitations of the traditional social media marketing agency model. The first being there's no irresistible offer. So I've touched briefly on this, but going a bit deeper into this, right? The return is ambiguous, right? So the KPI is leads. We're optimizing for leads. Leads do not equal money. You can see there, you can see on the slide, there's a little diagram, right? we've got on the left hand side, we've got a cold prospect. On the right hand side of the timeline, we've got a customer, right? Now, a lead is not a customer, right? It's definitely closer to being a customer than a cold prospect, but it's not a customer, right? A lead is not a customer. And so the problem here is that the sale is not within your scope of control, right? So sure, there can be a value attached to a lead, but the sale is not under your control. Many local business agencies run into the problem down below because they cannot demonstrate the value, right? And so what happens is, since these agencies are optimizing for a lead, right? They're telling the client, hey, I'm going to get you this many leads, right? I'm going to get you, what is a lead? It could be, for example, if you're doing restaurants, right? It could be someone who walks through the door to claim a free dessert. Or if you're doing dentist, right? It could be someone that walks through the door to claim a free teeth cleaning, whatever it is, or whatever it is, right? Or a mouth clean, whatever it is, right? Or if you're doing a beauty salon, it could be the customer who, a lead that walks through the door to claim their free, nail, to get their nails done for free, right? For, I don't know, a 30-minute session, right? So that is a lead. A lead has not purchased or spent any money yet, right? Now, who's responsible for converting that lead? Converted that person that you get to that you have walked through the client's door into a customer? The client does, right? And so it's not outside of our control, and that can be very hard because the reality is, the reality is the client has to be on point when it comes to the sales, right? So you can train the client to close these leads, but at the end of the day, the client has to know what they're doing when it comes to selling, right? And so the money you make them is not within your control. Also, they cannot, another thing to understand is with local businesses, especially, they can get away without using Facebook ads or paid ads, right? The reality is, it's not as essential for a local business to implement online advertising. Why? Because there are many other ways they can get traffic from, right? So street traffic elimination, right? So for example, they look at a bunch of, you're deciding between two gyms, right? One is, 10 miles from your house. The other one is a mile from your house. If the 10-mile gym is, maybe twice, 2 times better than the gym that is 1 mile from your house, you're still probably going to pick the gym that is closer to your house, simply because of the geographical limitation and elimination, right? So that's another thing to keep in mind. And the offer is not irresistible. They can do without it. So that is, those are some of the limitations when it comes to the offer. And this is a bit of an example when it comes to when you optimize for leads, right? And so here we've got 10 leads, right? Let's just say you've brought this client 10 leads, right? And the cost per lead was $1. So that would be $10 for those 10 leads. Now, let's just say that, let's just say that the client closes 10% of those people. So that would be one customer closed. And so you could say, well, and let's just say that the average order value per customer is $100, right? So you could say that you've spent $10 to produce $100. However, that's not always the case, right? And so that value is not, sure, you can attach a value to a lead, but it's not money in the bank, right? And so the client still has to close those people. Make sense? So those are the limitations of the traditional social media marketing agency model. And that's why it's very, very limited, because you want results of your service to be as tangible as possible if you want longevity, right? If you don't want longevity, then make sure that you have a service that has no tangible results. But if you do want longevity, you want a service that has very tangible results, because as long as you're making it very clear that you're making a client money, you're never going to lose this client. And also, it's going to be much easier to sell new clients onto your service. So what happened, just a little brief story. I started off with a local business agency, right? So I started off with a, we're doing health centers and gyms. So I started off with a local business agency, and I did pretty okay, right? Maybe I got to 5K a month, but the problem was that I run into two scenarios, right? So scenario number one was kind of more of the negative pessimist type of client, right? And so they would tell me, dude, you're getting me a lot of leads, but the leads are not qualified, right? The leads are weak. So they would blame the fact that, I was getting them incredible leads, I was getting them a lot of leads, but they could not close the lead. And so they would blame the fact that they could not close the leads on the fact that the leads were weak. which directly correlates to my work, right? And so it would come back to bite me in the ass, whereas the real problem was that the fact, the real bottleneck and the problem here was the fact that they could not close the leads, right? And so that's the first scenario. And the second scenario was more of the positive scenario, but still same outcome, right? So they would tell me, Jaime, your leads are amazing, right? You're doing an amazing job, but my team cannot close the lead. So let me actually train my team fast and, we'll come back to you. They never actually do, right? But those are the two scenarios, and they all resulted with me not having these clients, right? And they all resulted with me not having control of my destiny and not having control of my business. And look, if you are an entrepreneur and if you're looking to start a business, I'm guessing that what you want in your life is control over your finances, your time, your location. And so I started this business, but all of a sudden I didn't even have control over my value, right? Over, the one thing that would actually, make me and help me get my dream life, which was my business. And so it wasn't really a great equation. Now, another limitation of the traditional social media marketing agency model is the fact that it's hard to land sales goals. And the reason why that is because it's a physical business, right? And so many local business owners expect that human touch. In many cases, you're limited by location. So you cannot, let's just say you start in a developing country, right? Well, you're limited by location if you're doing local businesses, because you cannot tap into the worldwide economy, because a lot of local business owners, they expect that human touch, right? Even if you're based out in the US or the UK, you're still limiting yourself, right? Because you cannot tap into that worldwide economy. And so you're limited maybe by city, maybe by state, right? But a lot of business owners expect that human touch before signing on. Also, there's a massive inability to automate. So the platforms that can be automated and scaled are all, they're all online based. Most local business owners aren't spending their day online, but instead they're running around dealing with clients and patients. So other methods of outreach would be, that would be more suitable, like cold calling, cannot be scaled. And so you've got agency owners cold calling for 6-8 hours a day, or maybe sending out cold emails for 6 to 8 hours a day, and that's not scalable, right? And the reason why you cannot scale that is because oftentimes it's not bits in a computer, it's not zeros and ones, right? And so if it requires a human touch, if it requires your human flesh to carry out that outreach, right, to carry out those sales, which we'll talk about, by the way, at the end of the video on how to actually sign clients. But if you require that human element to carry out those sales, then the outcome is that it's not going to be scalable, right? And you're going to have to trade your time and energy to actually sign these clients. And that's the one thing that we have very limited of. So the final thing is team, right? So most of their team have a physical presence. They work with each other every single day. So there's a bit of a bigger shock factor when hiring someone to do the job externally, right? I've had this happen, especially when I started my local business agency, where they had quite a bit of resistance to hire a contractor because they expected the whole team to be in one single place, right? If you go to a gym, the people that work there are hanging out in a specific location, right? In specific, essentially the gym, right? But if you go to any online-based business, like an e-commerce business, right? Everyone is pretty much online. Maybe they have a bit of an office, but everyone could do the job online, and there would be no need for that physical presence. Third, it's hard to close sales calls, right? So the reason why that is because there's just a weaker pitch. The inability to show concrete dollar sign results and the fact that it's not absolutely vital for their success makes the pitch harder, right? And so these people do not necessarily, it's not absolutely vital for them to have your service. And so when they hear the pitch, sure, they see value in it, they see potential, but there's no pain points right there, right? And so, people move away from pain more than they move towards pleasure. And the idea of making more money, or the idea of the massive potential that there is by going online, is not as appealing as an e-commerce business, which we'll talk about in just a bit, who absolutely needs to have online advertising, because otherwise they're going to dry out, right? So that's that's the first thing. And the second thing is traditional, right? So due to the physical nature of their business, they do not expect, they expect that human touch. And so in many cases, you're limited by location, which limits the group of people that you can actually target and reach out to. And the final thing is client experience suffers. So there's a cap on growth because your value and impact is limited because there's only so much you can grow, right? If you're running ads for a gym, right? There's a maximum capacity. There's a specific maximum capacity. There's a cap on growth, right? Whereas if you're running ads for a local, an e-com business, you could grow to 1 million a month, right? 10 million a month, and obviously things would have to be scaled and things would maybe break at scale, but they could actually take that on, right? They wouldn't have to like expand their physical location, right? And it wouldn't be a huge ordeal, which would be in the case of local business. And the final thing is hard to maintain satisfaction, because one of the core pillars to satisfaction, results, it's outside of our control. So there's 3 pillars to client satisfaction: results, communication, and reporting. And so if results, which is one of the biggest pillars, right, is completely outside of our control, and if it's not as tangible as it could be, then it's not going to be it's going to be hard to maintain that satisfaction, and it's going to be hard to have longevity with those clients. So a bit about the new way of doing social media marketing agency, e-commerce marketing agency. So here it is out, and the first thing that I want to talk about is, okay, cool, I get that e-commerce is, you know, the way to go, right? But why not just build an e-commerce business, right? Why are you talking about the agency model? Like, if you're so bullish, right? If you're so sure of e-commerce, and, you know, clearly we can see, you showed us this statistics, right? We can see that e-commerce is growing at an unprecedented rate. Why not just start an e-commerce business and, you know, ditch the service-based business model? Here's why, right? I want you to imagine that you've got a semi-successful Shopify store making you $10,000 a month. For a lot of people, $10,000 a month is a good number, right? And it's, by the way, not easy. Now, however, there's a lot of expenses and moving parts, and you're taking home at the end of the day, at the end of the month, you're taking home $3,000 per month in profit. Okay. Now I want you to imagine this. So that's the previous scenario, and that's, you know, a lot of people, when they think of e-commerce, they're like, oh, I want to start a Shopify store, right? Now I want you to imagine this. So you've got one Shopify store, another one, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, right? And for example, you've got one of those Shopify stores is a successful Shopify store making $190,000 per month, which needs digital marketing, right? So maybe they've tapped into email marketing, maybe they're doing a bit of influencer marketing here or there, but they're in desperate need of digital marketing. Another Shopify store of the 9 that I just showed you could be another successful Shopify store making $80,000 per month, and they need digital marketing. Maybe they've done a bit of organic content on TikTok, and they've grown that way, but now they need to take things up a level. They need to be able to spend $1 and get 3, 4, 5, 7 back, right? And they need a predictable business, because they know this, right? Until they can spend money to acquire customers, they don't have a real business. They don't have a predictable business. And another Shopify store out of the 9 that I just showed you, another successful Shopify store making $230,000 per month, and they need digital marketing. So instead of having a semi-successful Shopify store, which takes a lot of time, energy, focus, and attention, because you need to understand a lot of business components because it's a very, you need to understand product development. You need to understand, online advertising. You need to understand branding, right? Logistics, etc., right? Instead of doing that, you're just offering your service to the Shopify stores at scale. So, for example, by offering paid ads, maybe Facebook and Google ads, you charge the first Shopify store $2,600 per month, right? You can also charge performance-driven incentives, and all combined, it comes out to that. The second Shopify store, you charge $2,100. Not a huge amount, but it's all profit, and I'll talk about that in just a bit. So that's you offer paid ads to this Shopify store, and you charge $2,100. And the third Shopify store, you go ahead and charge $3,700 for paid ad services. And so combined, you've got $8,400 per month profit, approximately, right? Which is technically a 6-figure business, right? In profit, very important. And so I show you that because I just want to dispel the, maybe a question that you're having. Okay, I understand that traditional SMEs, offering services to local businesses is definitely not the way to go. I understand that, Jaime, but if you're so bullish on e-commerce, why not just start an e-commerce store? Well, that's why, right? Now, one of the great things about it, and I could talk about this for hours, and I've talked about this in previous videos, definitely check them out after this video, but one of the great things is once you build this e-commerce marketing agency, then you can go ahead and launch those Shopify stores. Then you can go ahead and launch your own brands if that's what you wish to do, because now you've learned all these skills, right? By working with high-end top e-com brands, right? And so you've got a lot of money in the bank because you've gone service first, you've gone service-based business model, agency first, right? You've got a lot of money in the bank, you've got skills under your belt, and now you've got the confidence to be able to grow your own e-com store. So that's a bit about that. Now, why is this, the new way of doing SMA, EMA, why is it so great? 4 reasons. Number 1, when it comes to crafting and creating your irresistible offer, it lends itself way better to that, right? You can craft a truly irresistible offer, an offer that is very hard to say no to. The return is very clear, right? The KPI we're optimizing for is purchase. The main KPI is purchase conversion value. So it's very clear how much money we've made them. And you can see here on the slide, here's an example, right? Where, clearly we can see well, you cannot see the cost per purchase. Well, you can see the cost per purchase, but you cannot see the amount spent here. It got cut out, but you can actually calculate it if we just do a very simple division. But we've got the website purchase conversion value at £40,000, and that comes out to a website purchase ROAS of 4.78, right? And so the amount spent, if you do £40,000 divided by 4.78, it'll come out to be 8.5K roughly, right? And so you can clearly, my point is, you can clearly see how much money has been spent. You can clearly see how much money has been generated and what that means in terms of the return on the ad spend, on how much money we've spent on the ads. So the client sees this and they're like, keep going, right? Let's keep pouring money into it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you get to die on your own sword. If you get them incredible results, you're responsible. If you get them poor results, you are responsible. That gives you immense power. Don't let that scare you off. Make that your superpower, okay? Why? Because this is so much better than, the example that I showed you, and the story that I told you about of clients saying, hey, your leads are weak. Even though you know your leads are not weak, even though it's them that they cannot close the leads, who's gonna win that argument, right? And so it's better to put yourself in a position where there's absolutely no question as to what your value is, because numbers don't lie, right? And so you just show the numbers and you let the numbers do the talking, and you just keep working, you just keep making the money, and they're gonna keep you around for a very long time if they are sane, okay? If they're a sane business owner. The final thing is vital to success. So for most e-com businesses, their main source of traffic and customers will be online advertising. Not doing it well comes at a very large cost to the growth of the business. They're also constantly seeing other e-com brands build empires off of social media marketing, right? They can see, Gymshark, Kylie Cosmetics, Drunk Elephant, right? All these massive brands who are building e-com empires on the back of digital marketing, and they're just sitting on the sidelines, right? And they know what to do. They know how to get traffic. They know how to get eyeballs, right? And they know how to build a sustainable, predictable business. They just need the right person, right? And so it's a much easier sale. And one of the things that I truly believe in is once you've got control over your value, you've got longevity. Okay, if you can clearly show the value that you can offer, right? I showed you an example. Then you've got longevity, because as long as you're making the money, they're gonna keep you around. Also, booking strategy sessions, booking sales calls. I call them strategy sessions, but booking sales calls, it can be done on autopilot, right? It can be automated, it can be scaled, and landing sales calls with potential clients is vital to this business, right? The more sales calls that you land, the more calls that you jump on, the more sales that you're gonna generate, the more clients you're gonna have, the more success you're gonna have with your agency. And so there are no geographical limitations, and e-commerce business owners are completely fine with that, because that's how they operate their business too, right? Also, these outreach methods, a few of them I'm going to talk about at the end of the video, they're much more effective because the common outreach methods that people use are way more effective on e-commerce clients due to the nature of their business, which is online. For example, social media messaging, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, right? Emails, Loom videos, video audits. They land better because they spend their day online. And finally, sales can be automated. These platforms lend themselves well to automations because bits on a computer can be scaled. Zeros and ones can be scaled. If you're cold calling, if you're literally typing cold emails, right? You cannot scale that. You're always going to require to put in 6 to 8 hours of work every single day, right? Because that's very ineffective, and that's why you also have to put a lot of time into it, right? To actually sign clients, right? And so if you can scale this, if you can automate it, your life is going to be so much easier, and you're going to be able to literally wake up. I've got myself, my students as well, waking up to meetings being booked pretty much on autopilot, right? Because you've got an automated sales funnel. Number 3, doing and closing strategy sessions. You can do that in a much more effective way. So you need to understand that these people, e-com founders, they've hired people online in the past. So by now, the vast majority of e-com owners have hired someone online without ever meeting them. VAs, agencies, team members, most of their team will operate online too. So keep that in mind. Also, on the demo call, or on whatever sales call, on a sales call, we'll be able to walk them through a demo of our service with clear processes and results. So you can clearly show them the processes, the path of, the plan of attack, and the results that are going to go along with it. And the final thing is obsessive client experience and satisfaction. So one of the great things about e-commerce agency is the fact that you can charge high retainers. On average, e-com businesses tend to have healthier profit margins, around 30%, which allows them to invest more into revenue generating activities like online advertising. This means more tangible growth for the client and your agency. Now I say 30%, but that is a very safe estimate. Most of my clients have 60, 70, even 85% profit margins. So keep that in mind. But it allows them to invest way more into revenue generating activities. And finally, full transparency. So business owners love seeing their dollars being put to work, generating them more dollars. Who doesn't, right? And they can clearly see how much money we're making them with paid ads. Because when it comes to e-commerce, as I said, what we're optimizing for is purchase. We're literally getting someone to put out, to get their card and pay for something. It's not a lead. It's not someone who's walking through a clinic or whatever it is, right? It's someone who's taking out their card and paying for a product. So, do you remember this, right? We talked about the unprecedented rate of growth in the e-com space. Well, let me add this to the equation to really convey the fact that not only is the e-com space in very, very high need of e-com growth services, but also the fact that most business owners are in desperate need of marketing. And so when you combine the two, you've got e-commerce, marketing agency, and you've got a business model that has a lot of potential. So here's what you need to understand about most business owners' current situation, which is pretty worrying. Okay, once you really, I've spoken to probably thousands at this point of business owners, and I've asked good questions about their pain points and their current situation, and it's become very apparent that these four things, in one way or the other, apply to most business owners. So most business owners are product obsessed. Their business is their baby, and they put all their energy and attention on their product. They think that people will just magically flock to it simply because it's a great product. Also, not enough eyeballs. So when then they realize that not enough people are buying their product because not enough people know about it, right? So they thought that they would just create this product, amazing product, right? They would invest a lot of time into creating it, a lot of money into R&D, into research and development, and people will just flock to it. But that really doesn't happen, right? There's a lot of noise online. And for someone to really take notice of something, you must get in front of them with a very good message. Number 3, it keeps them up at night. Now they have all this inventory. They have invested greatly on research and development and into creating amazing products. They have a team they need to take care of, an amazing team, but they don't know where the next customer will come from. They just don't know how to sell this product, right? And so, they're not very happy, right? They're not very happy, and they cannot sleep very tight at night. And the final thing is, they know that they have to fix this, right? But they don't have the time or the expertise. They know they desperately need marketing, but they simply don't have the time to try to master it. They're spending most of their time on low yield 20% activities, which are, things like, customer support and managing the team and, jumping on team calls and, producing new products. For what, right? You don't even have a best-selling product. Fix that fast, right? And they know this, they understand that. So the final thing that I will say on this, to really illustrate the fact that, this is something that they desperately need is the fact that marketing is not a choice, it's an actual obligation. It is absolutely vital. It is mandatory if they are to grow their e-com business, right? So the problem for most business owners is the fact that when they started their business, they did not understand, what their role actually was, right? They didn't understand that they were in a complete different business than they actually thought. And the reason why I say that is because, look, the baker thinks he's in the baking business, right? The plumber in the plumbing business, the dentist in the dentistry business. The funny thing is they're not, okay? They are in the business of selling those products and services, right? The dentist is in the business of selling his dentistry services, right? He's not in the dentistry business, okay? So they didn't really understand what business they were getting into. They didn't understand how important it was to actually sell, right? To market their service. And the next thing is number one priority, getting their product out there and in front of as many people, as many qualified prospects with the right messaging is an absolutely vital task, okay? Everything else is secondary to that. Until they have this thing sorted, until they have a predictable stream of customers, until they can pay a certain amount to acquire a customer profitably, they don't have a business, and they know this, okay? And that's how desperately they need these type of services. Because look, a lot of e-com businesses, a lot of businesses in general, they might look good on the outside, but inside, they're just like that, okay? Inside, most are desperate. Inside, they're actually dying inside, okay? Even worse, traditional media just doesn't cut it anymore for most small, medium-sized business, right? So you might say, well, okay, cool, but why not just traditional media? Why online advertising? Here's why, right? This is a graph by Live Marketing, basically conveying the cost of acquiring a customer, and you can see basically conveying the cost per 1,000 impressions, so the CPM, and you can see that social media is by far the lowest. Okay, with direct mail and broadcast TV being some of the highest, $57. And the final thing that I'll say on this, before we move on to the really hard-hitting, juicy stuff, right? I've preluded, and hopefully you can see that e-commerce is definitely the way to go. That business owners don't have this thing sorted, so they need this service desperately. And the final thing that I'll say on this is a few misconceptions that you may be having, right? You might be thinking, well, wouldn't e-com brands already have online advertising? No, right? Most do not have a clue, which is shocking. Hopefully you understand how shocking that is, right? How do these people not know how to market and sell their product? Like, they're literally, you've seen, right? They're in the business of selling products. Well, they think that they're in the business of selling X, Y, and Z. They think that they're in the business of selling lipsticks, or they think they're in the business of selling shoes. They're not, right? But they haven't understood that yet. So it really shocked me too, right? When I started my agency, I thought that everyone would surely, have this sorted, right? And I have this limiting belief of who am I to tell these people, right? How would they consider me an expert? Well, they're great at other things, right? Business owners, founders, e-com founders, they're great at creating a product. They're great at building a team, but most of them don't have a single clue as to online advertising. Maybe they have a bit of clue as to traditional media, but they don't have a clue as to how online advertising actually works. So it really shocked me, right? They're just product obsessed and have no idea how to sell and market. And so most are not even using online advertising. To illustrate that with facts, okay, before we move on, these are just some stats, okay? So this is just Facebook. We've got 30 million, roughly, probably a bit more, Facebook pages. Only 1.5 million actually spend money on advertising. That's not a lot, right? If we look at other platforms, you thought that Facebook was little, right, in terms of percentages. Well, Facebook is actually one of the biggest platforms. So we've got 27.2 billion in ad revenue. But if you look at the other platforms, Snapchat, 2.5 billion. Less than 10% when it comes to compared to Facebook. Pinterest, 1.3 billion. TikTok, 500 million. That number has probably grown at this point because TikTok has been growing like crazy, but it's still compared to Facebook, compared to Google, compared to those considered giants in the online advertising space, still a fraction of the total market share of e-com founders and business owners. So that is a bit about the current social landscape that surrounds us, right? And why building an e-com agency is by far the best thing you can do if you're looking to start a social media marketing agency. Now a bit about building a monopoly agency. What is a monopoly agency? So a few things to keep in mind. It's still extremely important to find a way to set ourselves apart. And that's because we don't want to compete. A lot of people who get into the space, and I've mentioned this already, who get into the space, they're looking to fit in, right? Maybe they see me putting out a YouTube content, right? And they go, okay, I'm going to copy this guy. I'm going to try to fit in. No, if you actually watch my videos, you would know that that's not the way to go, right? And the reason why we don't want to do that is because we don't want to compete. Not even with one agency, right? You don't want to compete with one agency, let alone 1,000 other agencies. Make sense? Because competition is for losers. Competition is for losers. I'll let that sink in and I'll explain this in just a bit. Now, competition for losers is a concept inspired by Pedro Thiel, a co-founder of PayPal. He's got a good book, 0 to 1. Definitely recommend you read that book if you've had a few years in the entrepreneurial journey. I don't think it's a great book for beginners. Doesn't really have many actionable strategies, but essentially what he says in the book is that a valuable company comes down to two things, right? It equals two things. Number one, you create value, and then you add capturing some of the fraction of the value created, right? So you create value and then you capture some of the value, the fraction of the value created. Now, he then goes on to say that there's two types of companies. We've got monopolies and we've got perfect competition, right? And so we've got two types of companies, but what are the differences between monopolies and a perfect competition business? Here are the differences, right? So we've got the monopolies are basically, these are businesses that are more stable. They are long-term businesses. They have very little competition and they have more capital. They're making more money. Perfect competition, however, they don't seem too happy, as you can see. They sell an identical product. They cannot control the market price of their product or their service. They have a relatively small market share. Their buyers know exactly the product being sold and the price other firms, other agencies, other service providers are charging, right? And what happens is they don't make a lot of money. And so the funny thing is most agencies, most people starting a social media marketing agency, they are these people, right? They are perfect competition businesses. They sell the identical thing. They sell Facebook ads, Google ads, whatever it is, right? They cannot control the market price of their service because they have absolutely no differentiation strategy. As a result, they don't really conquer a big chunk of the market share. In most cases, clients know how much they should be paying for Facebook ads or Google ads because they don't have an actual offer. And as a result, they don't make a lot of money, which definitely applies for most people. So monopolies, right? If you look at, what are some examples of monopolies? So Google, for example, is a monopoly, 66. And the reason why that is, although, technically it would not be described as a monopoly, otherwise they would have their, the government on their ass. And I'll explain, why they're able to get away with it. But Google, for example, has a 66% of the market share of the search industry. That is a big chunk, okay? If you look at Amazon, they have a 49% market share of e-commerce. If you look at Microsoft, they have an 87.5% market share of Office suites. Now, what are some examples of perfect competition? Number one, hospitality industry, right? You've got hundreds, thousands of hotel brands, and look, when you're traveling to a city, right? When you're traveling abroad, most people are not very romantic and passionate about this specific hotel chain that they're going to, right? They just like the hotel for whatever reason, right? And they just go to that hotel, maybe location, maybe I don't know, the way the hotel looks, but it's not really because of the hotel chain. Also the agriculture industry, right? So all these brands that you can see here, another example. And as well as the airline industry, most people are not very loyal to their most people are not very loyal to their airline. So how do they get away with it? I'll explain how in just a bit. I'll explain how this actually applies for the e-com agency model and why it's incredibly important to be not the perfect competition type of business, but the monopoly business. Well, the reason why they get away with it is because monopolies pretend to have lots of competition. They don't want the government to regulate them, so they won't call themselves a monopoly. For example, Google won't describe themselves as a search engine anymore. They'll say they're competing with Apple on TVs and smartphones, right? And Amazon on cloud services. Make sense? So they don't describe themselves as the one thing that they've conquered and they're actually a monopoly, but they'll describe themselves as the one thing that they're not really, great at. And essentially argue that they're competing with other big companies. However, non-monopolies pretend to have no competition, so they're tempted to lie because they may not make any money otherwise. They'll say they're doing something unique that is less competitive than it looks in an attempt to separate themselves from the rest of the herd. It may seem these two types of companies are very similar. The airplane industry is bigger than search, for example, but they're widely different. And so the funny thing is, a lot of social media marketing agencies, right? They'll say they're unique because they're doing X, Y, and Z, right? They're actually not, and they're competing with thousands and thousands of other agencies because they haven't set themselves apart. So how does this apply to EMA? Now, here's most people, right? Maybe and this is not obviously going to be you if you stay till the end of the video, but most people hear about this e-com space, right? And they're like, oh, cool, I'm going to do that. I can clearly see that local business is not the way to go, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to become an e-com agency. Not so fast, all right? Because what happens is, let's just imagine, these people on yellow suits, on yellow outfits. They're looking pretty drippy. Let's just imagine that they're gonna try to start a broad e-com agency. Now, what happens is you've got someone like Ecom, which is my agency, right? A broad e-commerce agency. And so these two guys, these two beginners, right, looking to get started with their agency, go ahead and they try to, they try to compete with these broad ecom agencies who are already maybe in the market and have been in the market for a number of years, right? And what happens? Well, RIP, John and Lauren, the ecom agency, obviously, completely outcompetes John and Lauren because they have more experience. They've been around for longer, and John and Lauren they're trying to compete with these people at the one thing that they're good at, right? And so that's not a really good strategy. And this is the deadly mistake most people make, right? When they start a social media marketing agency, which is what this whole presentation is all about, right? When they start a social media marketing agency, they try to go after a big market from the get-go, right? And it's always funny because, a lot of people, they talk about like, oh, but I'm scared of saturation and I'm scared of competition, and I think there's a lot of saturation. Yet they do the one thing that puts them in the position to have, to experience saturation firsthand and to really be outcompeted by other agencies. Okay, so not the great, not the greatest strategy. So they see the advantage of e-commerce and they dive straight into the deep end. There you deal with a number of competitors, like for example my agency, who's been around for longer. So that way you're competing with established agencies. These agencies have more authority, social proof, experience, expertise, case studies than you. Right? It's impossible to beat them at their game. You don't want to be the 3rd, the 4th, the 10th, or the 20th in a space. These are, always, these people are unhappy, unsuccessful agency owners that are alike because they fail to escape the essential sameness in competition. And this failure to escape competition leads to an epidemic of what I call Me Too agencies. Agencies offering the same service in the same niche, competing for the same clients. Look, if you're watching this presentation, do not be a Me Too agency, okay? That's reserved for people that have watched other, how to start a social media marketing agency videos. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're not going to be another typical social media marketing agency offering the same type of service, offering, to a different niche in the local business space or e-commerce. We're not going to do that, right? We're going to be very, very strategic about the specific, space within e-commerce that we go into, right? So that we don't have competition and we can conquer that space. So how can we escape competition and beat these other agencies? And here I'm kind of, I'm doing myself dirty because I'm literally giving you a blueprint on how you can actually beat, agencies like mine, for example, that are big in the e-com space. David versus Goliath. You want to use this strategy. You want to use this mindset going into it. So here's a comprehensive guide on beating the competition. The first thing is you want to understand thy enemy. So typically we've got two types of agencies. When approaching premium e-com brands, okay, which are the clients that we are going to be signing, I'm going to be showing you in just a bit how to sign these clients, okay? There are two types of agencies we're going up against. Number one, the do-it-all agencies and the broad e-com agencies. So the do-it-all agencies are the agencies that are doing pretty much every single niche, right, in the world. They're doing restaurants, they're doing clinics, they're doing dentists, but they're also doing e-com brands, right? They're doing everything. And you've also got, on the flip side, you've got e-com agencies, right? They're doing, vegan brands and, fashion brands and beauty brands and tech brands, right? They're using, they're basically helping all types of e-com brands grow, right? So these are the two types of agencies that you're going up against, and understand thy enemy actually helps you visualize who you're going up against, right? And by understanding that, then you can, you know what their strengths and weaknesses are, and you know how you can beat them. So the strengths are the fact that they've got more authority, they've got a track record, they've got testimonials and results, and they've got more experience and expertise. But the weakness is they don't have a specific focus on a sub-niche. They're encompassing big markets, which is a double-edged sword, because they're not, and you'll see this, why this is actually a weakness, but since they're not in one specific space, right? They're not the go-to agency in that space. They could be the go-to agency because they have all those strengths that I just talked about. But if another agency that specializes in that space and does only that one space and knows all about that one space, then they're going to get beat, right? They're going to get beaten by this other agency. And the second thing is they're bloated and big. It's hard to personalize to different sub-niches, even if they wanted to, right? So even if they wanted to do what I just talked about, even if they wanted to appeal to just one specific segment of people, right? Maybe vegan brands for a month, right? It would be almost impossible because they would have to, pivot everything, right? And you want to imagine these two types of agencies as this big elephants that are just clunky and just don't really know how to be agile and move very quickly. The second thing we want to do is we want to understand where you're currently at, right? So you right now watching this video, you want to understand that persona. You want to understand who, what your strengths are and your weaknesses are. So a bit about the weaknesses: what you don't have experience. In most cases, you don't have results or testimonials, and typically you don't have a track record. Maybe this does not, it doesn't apply to you, but I'm guessing most people watching this video, that's the case, right? What you do have is you have the right guidance, right? If you're watching this video, you have a really good start. You have work ethic and hunger. You have the ability to pivot easily, and understanding who your competitors would be down the broad e-com path, right? So you understand who those competitors would be down the broad e-com path. The third thing is we want to understand the factor of 10 rule. So you want to understand that you don't need to be the first to the e-com space to be successful. You simply need to offer, your offer to be 10x better than the competition. Okay. For example, if you look at Microsoft, was the last operating system for many decades. Google was the last search engine. Facebook will be valuable. Okay, their value will be determined by not who was first to market, right? But instead by the longevity, right? So if it turns out to be the last social media network, Facebook will be the most valuable social media network. Okay, so my point is, you need to be, we now understand who the enemy is, right? We understand who what you do have and what you don't have, and we also understand what we need to do to actually beat our competition. And so we need to level the playing field given our and their strengths and weaknesses, right? So we understand what those are, and we also understand that we need to offer something that is 10x better than them. So we don't compete with them and they cannot compete with us. So how do we actually do that? Right? So we understand what we need to do, but how do we actually do that? We need to narrow down into a specific sub niche within the e-com space. And this is what most people don't actually do, okay? But it is absolutely vital that you do this. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and picture e-commerce, right? And then you want to break it down into its, subsequent, you want to break it down into its sub niches, right? A great way of doing this, if you go on any big e-commerce conglomerate and search platform, like for example, Amazon, you will see a bunch of categories, right? You will see a bunch of sub niches. These are the sub niches that I'm referring to, right? So these are some examples of product-based sub niches. We've got tech, apparel and fashion, fitness, health and wellness, home, pets, beauty, food and beverage, baby. The list goes on and on and on, okay? So it's incredibly vital that you pick one. And the reason why you want to pick one is because, as we spoke about, right? What you don't want to do is you don't want to compete in a broad e-com space. You don't want to compete for the same clients that these other broad e-com agencies or these other do-it-all agencies are competing for. We want to laser focus in one single sub niche. Why? So that you have the advantage of being the agency that laser focuses in one single sub niche. And when you have that, even though you are just getting started, even though you're a beginner, you still have a massive advantage. Okay? Because people love, there's this thing called in-group, out-group bias, right? People resonate with people that share similar interests, similar characteristics, and similar knowledge, right? And so if you focus just on the baby sub-niche, right, and you're approaching baby brands, right, and this baby brand is getting approached by a broad e-com agency, a do-it-all agency, and a baby-specific sub-niche e-com agency, they're going to go for your brand, right? Obviously, if you have the right processes and all that stuff that we'll talk about in just a bit, but it's incredibly important that you do this. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very hard to actually get traction at the start. Why? Because you're competing with people that have a lot more strengths than you do. Okay, so hopefully you're staying with me. If you're enjoying this and you haven't hit the like button, I'd really appreciate it if you do that. It helps out with the algorithm, the whole channel, and I'd really appreciate it. So go ahead and do that right now, and we'll take a bit of a break before we get straight into the next section, which is picking a hybrid e-com service. So let's just do a bit of a recap, right? We've talked about what has changed, right? So we've talked about the current social landscape. We've also talked about the new way of doing things, right? We've talked about how the traditional SME model, forget about that, right? It's all about the e-com space now. But okay, cool. We understand that the e-com space is the way to go, right? We understand that also creating an e-com brand, not so bueno, right, at the start. But why is it, how do we compete with these other big agencies that have already an established name in the e-com space? Well, we do that by laser focusing into the sub niche, into a specific sub niche. Now we're going to talk about even another way to even add another massive strength to your arsenal, so that it makes signing clients and growing your agency so much easier. And that is picking a hybrid e-com service. So a few things you want to keep in mind, right? Let's discuss the difference between the two types of services you can pick. So you can pick a social return or a revenue-driven service. Now, the social return service, the goal here is they're optimized to increase brand credibility, lift brand image, create communities, and drive organic traffic. The return is social. For example, an increase in views, followers, engagement, right? What they lack, however, is a clear monetary return. There's no way to attribute revenue growth and make it tangible. So in times of crisis, what happens is business owners, they look at their balance sheet, right? And they keep the things that are making them money, but cut the things that are not, right? Since it's harder to convey the value of social return services, these services are not bulletproof, okay? However, for example, social media management, Instagram growth, TikTok growth, video editing, customer support, community manager, podcast creation and growth, filmmaking and videography, creative, for example, creating slideshows, social media content, etc. These have a return, right? And I'm gonna say, 100% having more followers, having a more engaged community is gonna lead to more dollars down the line. But right now, what's the return? And also, how tangible is it? How can I see the dollars be made, right? With social return, like you can see patterns, right? But you cannot see, we put this much in and we made this back. However, with revenue-driven services, the goal is to make clients a return on their advertising spend. We've talked about this, right? It's got an impact on sales, revenue, profit, and business growth. It takes more skill, sure. So the barrier to entry actually means the higher barrier to entry actually means there's more differentiation. A lot of people are scared of a higher barrier to entry. I absolutely love it, and you should too, right? Because if you just put in a bit of effort, okay, if you just commit, which you should, and people who watch my channel, people commit. These people commit, right? They go full in. They're relentless about the building a business. They're not just in it for the quick cash or a little gimmick, right? Anyways, my point is, it's great for us since we take things seriously and we have an expert team. Also sustainable. So as long as you're making your clients a profit, no sane business owner will cut you off. Next, higher switching costs. Okay, since clients understand there's a science and art to business growth and making money, they often become hooked on our service. We're seen as kind of like wizards almost, right? We are modern day alchemists, and they know very few people will be able to do what we're doing. We aren't perfectly competitive, right? So we've escaped perfect competition because our offer is so rare and so tangible at the same time, right? That they see us as these wizards, right? That are making their business growth and that are making their business grow, and it's not very easy to come by those people. And the final thing is we can charge based on performance. Since there's a clear return on the investment, we can charge according to performance. So you can clearly see, hopefully, at this point that it's the route to take is definitely revenue-driven services. So if you were thinking of these, probably not the best idea, right? You can take it, you can leave it, but probably not the best idea because these are social return services. So we want to do revenue-driven services. Now, before we talk about what those look like, a few pitfalls to watch out for. But I didn't even know this was coming. If you're enjoying this so far, right, and you haven't already, go ahead and like. If you're enjoying the training so far, go ahead and make that ugly looking like button turn blue. But with that being said, I'll wait for you to do that. And with that being said, let's go back into the training. A few pitfalls to watch out for. So the first one is do not marry your service. So we can see here that these people have made a mistake because we can see this woman has married Snapchat and this guy has married Facebook, and they're probably gonna have a very bad marriage, and probably it's gonna end in divorce because that's just not the way you want to do things. Okay, do not marry your service. So what I mean by this, first things first is the same way that we don't pick a niche based on passion. We don't want to pick a platform because we like it. We are not romantic about the platform that we pick. Okay. We just we audit and see what platforms will generate the highest return for our clients, okay? And that is what we base our decision on. It's not because we like Facebook ads. We're not a Facebook ads agency. We're not a Google ads agency. That's not our identity, right? We are in the business of e-com growth, of growing our clients' businesses. So it's all about generating the highest return possible for them. And look, if Facebook ads was to die in the next month, I wouldn't be too phased by that, right? Even though I would say most of our clients, I would say 70% of our time is spent on Facebook and Instagram ads. I wouldn't be too-faced about that, right? Because we can just pivot very quickly, and we can do that in a very, very effective manner. So, and that's the next point, right? We're able to pivot very quickly. And if, for whatever reason, next month, Facebook ads, which could be my flagship service right now, is not the place where we can generate the highest return for our clients, we'll just pivot, right? We'll pivot to the next thing. We'll pivot to TikTok ads. We'll pivot, we'll go harder on Google ads, right? It's just all about the one thing that's going to generate them the highest return possible. For example, here's a really, real life example, the Google Perch, right? So I want you to imagine this, and this actually happened, so it's not just a made up story. So John starts advertising on Google ads. He starts with $1,000 and starts seeing sales roll in. Things are going great, right? He's very excited. Things are finally clicking. He hires more people to deal with the influx of new sales and increase their ad spend. He's really happy they found an advertising channel that works to scale their business. Suddenly, without warning, Google changes the landscape of their ad platform. This actually happened, right? Friday, February 2016, Google decided to remove sidebar ads on search results. And they look like that. You can see it on the picture. There's a big arrow pointing at it. Those were sidebar ads, and overnight they were gone. Okay, so businesses who relied purely on Google ads to get traffic and sales were hurt badly. Google actually wiped out 70% of the ad real estate, making remaining spots much more competitive and obviously much more expensive. So John has to fire staff and scramble for a new way to get customers. And the reason why this happened to John is because he was romantic about Google ads. He was like, he saw it as the one thing that was going to help him grow his business. And when you rely too heavily on one thing, and when you're romantic about one thing, you can get your heart broken. And that's what happened here, right? So that is the Google Perch. What can we learn, right? Number one, do not depend on one single channel. You never want your business or your client's lifeblood of their business to rely purely on one channel. Your business should be able to operate regardless of Zuckerberg, Larry Page, and others. Next, platforms come and go. Okay, recently, for example, you guys might have heard of it. I made a video on my channel. It was the iOS 14 update impacting Facebook ads negatively. We haven't seen much of a difference, much of an impact at the agency, but the key is to stay agile and to never marry one single service, but to keep a cool head when it comes to switching over to other platforms. So now you know what to watch out for when it comes to picking your service. Here are 3 keys to remember when picking your service, and here are the 3 commandments you don't want to violate. Okay, do not violate any of these commandments. Number 1 is the commandment of location. We don't want the service to tie us down to a location. We must be able to do it remotely from anywhere in the world. Otherwise, it will eat up our financial freedom and ability to scale past the human flesh. For example, video creation. If you are offering video creation and you're looking to start a video creation agency, look, it could still be an e-com agency, right? Helping e-com brands with the video creation, but you're going to violate that commandment of location because you have to actually be there shooting the content for the client. Okay. You also don't want to violate the commandment of time. So results shouldn't be immediate, but they should also not take months. Okay. There should be a fast feedback loop. For example, SEO takes quite a bit of time, right, for you to see the results. Not a great, flagship front-end offer. Also, website building, not the greatest choice because, again, it violates the commandment of time. Also, there should be no correlation between our time and our value, and I'll speak about this in just a bit. Incredibly vital. Okay, do not trade time for money. Okay, we want to make sure that we pick a service where there's no correlation, right, between the time we spend and the value that we generate. It should be asymmetric. And the final thing is commandment of scale. So this service should be as close to replicable as possible, and someone else should be able to do it. It should also have a maximum capacity of more than 7 clients. So I really want you to remember the second commandment, however. We're not time slaves, okay? Do not trade your time for money. That is the way you lose. A lot of freelancers do this, especially the ones that are paid by the hour. We don't want to do that, okay? So keep that in mind. So with that being said, okay, we talked about I've preluded, and I'm a big fan, as you guys can see, of preluding because I could just tell you like, hey, these are the services, these are the niches, but that would really it wouldn't help you, right? You want to understand why we're doing what we're doing, on top of obviously how to actually do it, not just the what, right? Because the what doesn't actually empower you. Okay, the what, you go implement it, you're like, oh, I know this, right? Then you go implement it and you're like, there's a missing piece of the puzzle, right? Why? Because you haven't understood why we're doing what we're doing, right? So it's really important to understand why we're doing what we're doing. If you've jumped to this part, then it probably tells me a bit about how your SMA journey is going to go. So here are your service options. Now, before I get into it, what is a sales funnel, right? Maybe you know this, maybe you don't, but a sales funnel very important, and the reason, and you see why it's incredibly important. But a sales funnel, what it is the journey we take a prospect who's never heard about our product or service towards the purchase of this product and service. So we've got different stages. We've got, for example, awareness, we've got consideration, we've got preference, purchase, and loyalty at the very, very end. So how does this apply to the service? Okay? The way I'm going to explain the service for an e-com agency is by breaking down the typical e-com funnel, right? This is the way that I've broken it down, and this is the way that I see an e-commerce funnel. Basically, what I mean by this is these are all the things that are required to get someone to go from awareness to that loyalty and purchase stage. So it all starts with paid traffic and the ad content, right? So we need a picture or a video, right? And we need to pair it with a platform, right? So we put in front of people an ad, and we actually select the people that we want to get in front of, right? So that is the combination that we need to actually get started, right? So that is the combination that we need to create awareness, and that is the combination that is going to generate the top of the funnel people. Make sense? Now, these people we're going to drive to a landing page, right? So we're going to drive to a landing page. On that landing page, obviously, we want them to buy something, right? We're going to have an offer, which is the next thing on the funnel. So on that landing page, we're going to have an offer. Now, when they see the offer, they can do a bunch of things, right? And that's what I call the website journey, right? They can go ahead and add to cart, and they can go through the checkout process, for example. They can go ahead and, look around the website and go on the About Us section or wherever it is, right? But that is the website journey. And then after that website journey, we're looking to get that purchase, okay? Now, as you can see right below, we've got direct marketing. And what that is basically the people that don't convert, right? We've got SMS, email marketing, chatbot, right? Basically getting in front of these people, leading them to that purchase. So the reason why I say this is because we can actually break down the funnel into its subsequent services, okay? So for example, paid traffic, we can break it down into Facebook ads, Google ads, Snapchat ads, TikTok ads, Pinterest ads, right? Ad content, we can actually break it down into viral e-com ad creation, okay? Now, landing page, we can actually create the landing page for e-com brands, right? When it comes to the offer, we can actually copyright. So we can do copywriting for that offer to make sure that our clients have an incredible offer on that landing page that is pretty much a very, very hard to say no to. Conversion rate optimization. Okay, so that website journey, is it optimized, right? Or are people getting lost on the website, leading them to not purchase, right? So we can offer that as a service. Okay. And finally, with direct marketing, email marketing, SMS marketing, messenger chatbots, right? We can offer all those services as direct marketing services. So we've turned the funnel into what I call the e-com service funnel. Pretty cool stuff. So a bit about these services, one by one. What it is, running so paid ads, for example, what it is, running targeted ads to cold and retargeting audiences and driving this traffic to the client's website to convert it into purchases. We are responsible for 3 areas: targeting, creatives, although we use the ones we're provided with, and ad copy. 2 routes. So you can either go down the more established route, Facebook and Google Ads, you can pick that, or with the newer platforms, TikTok, Snapchat, or Pinterest, right? You want to pick, one of the 2 routes. Don't pick both, just pick one or the other, simply because it's different value offerings, right? For example, the more established route, it's more established, so people already know the value, right? Facebook ads, Facebook and Google ads, like e-com brands already know that this is a proven service, right? A lot of e-com brands have already had success with these services, whereas the newer platforms, they don't have that credibility as much as Facebook, but they do have that new component, right? Where not as many people may be doing that, okay? We're not really worried about that competition element because by now you should pick the sub niche. You also have an irresistible offer. You're building a monopoly agency, so that's not something that really worries us. But sometimes those newer platforms can get more attention, especially from the brands that maybe have Facebook and Google ads implemented, or so they think, right? Those are the 2 routes. The pro is the start of the funnel, so it's arguably the most vital piece of the puzzle, right? Without paid ads, without traffic, there's no need for conversion rate optimization or having a really good copy-written offer. Also, it can be scaled quite easily without a large time investment from your side. And most prospects think that their problem is a traffic problem. Thinking that they actually only have a traffic problem is not true, but it makes it easier to sell the service. And the final thing is the con. So probably not, these are probably, paid ads is probably the most competitive, and it's not as effective if one doesn't have a 360 approach to e-com growth. And what I mean by that is that, while most people only, if they're doing Facebook ads, they only think of e-com growth through a Facebook ads lens. They think, well, Facebook ads is the one thing that's going to help you grow. That's not necessarily true, right? Because it's very important that we have a 3-6 approach. Sure, we're not offering landing page creation or we're not offering conversion rate optimization, but we know that these things exist. We know that these things are important to make sure that the paid traffic, the top of the funnel, actually yields the best results possible. So that's what I mean by that, but definitely a really good option. Next thing is viral ecom ad creation. So what it is, creating high converting viral ads for ecom brands to run them to cold audiences. Okay, I'm sure you've seen this, the typical video ads where, you know, it basically showcases the product. It has basically a bunch of different, it's kind of like a carousel video, right? Where with a bunch of different scenes showcasing the benefits and the features of the product and the product in use in most cases. So the pro, the tangible return, a 1% higher click-through rate on an ad could mean extra thousands of website visitors daily, which could mean hundreds of extra new customers. So there's a clear return, right? And with all the services, there's a clear return. And finally, there's a winning formula. So there's a replicable and winning process. The con, it struggles for longevity. So once the client has a few winning ads, there's not a very predictable turnaround rate. And the final thing is overlap with agency paid traffic services. So many agencies already offer to do the creative portion on top of the paid traffic service side, right? So it's a good service, especially if you like that creative component and maybe you have a bit of a video editing experience under the belt. But yeah, that's a viral ecom ad creation. Next is landing page creation. So we've talked about this, obviously you saw on the ecom funnel. What it is creating a high converting landing page, usually on Shopify. So the pro, again, a tangible return, a 1% higher conversion rate could mean thousands of new customers on a daily basis. And winning formula, there's a replicable and winning process. The con, struggles with longevity, typically one-off unique projects, slow turnaround, so it takes a long time to see the results, and low capacity. So when you have a clients that signed on for landing page creation, it's quite time intensive. So 3 to 4 clients can already take up a lot of our team members' time. Next is copywriting. So writing words on a landing page that actually sell. So pro, tangible return, a 1% higher conversion rate, can mean thousands of new customers, right? But a con, higher barrier to entry. So you can outsource the service, but typically a service you exhibit with your outreach and a skill that is not learned overnight. And also there's overlap with other agency services. So oftentimes the website agency will also be doing the copyright. Next is direct marketing. So email marketing, SMS marketing, and chatbots. What it is, basically communicating with members of the public who've shown an intent to buy from you through direct communication like email, SMS, or messenger chat. The pro, there's a tangible return. So there's a clear dollar sign attached to the service. Also, it's pure profit. So it doesn't require any ad spend. It's a matter of using their current assets more effectively. This means that you can also often work on pure commission and still make a lot of money. And it's fairly untapped. I would say most businesses are leaving so much money on the table by not doing so that it's very untapped. And it's definitely something that, I would say, especially for ecom businesses, like, 85% are probably not doing email marketing right. So that's that. And the con, it's a big upfront time investment. Typically writing the copy for the emails is time intensive, but once it's done, right? So it's not a huge con, but that is direct marketing, definitely a good option as well. And conversion rate optimization is the final service. So what it is a system for increasing the percentage of visitors to a website that converting to customers, or more generally take a desired action. So the pro, it's got a tangible return. Increasing the conversion rate on a website could mean thousands of extra dollars. Also, it's pure profit, so it doesn't require any ad spend. It's just making more out of the traffic they're already paying for. The con, it does struggle for longevity because, typically better suited for a one-off consulting agreement. Once you've optimized their website, there's very little you can actually do for 10, 14, 18, 24 months, right? It's usually a longer time span. So those are the e-com services that I recommend you pick, and you've seen that they all stem from a very clearly defined e-com funnel. Now, my recommendation is either paid ads or email marketing, especially if you don't have an affinity for these other services that I've already spoken about. Now, if you have experience, if you have an affinity, maybe a bit of a passion, maybe you've done it in the past, then definitely consider it, right? Knowledge is power, and so now you have all these options. You're aware of all the options that are available to you. So that is that for these services. Little recap, but before I do the recap, if you haven't liked the video, go ahead and make that ugly looking red like button turn blue. Only if you are liking the video, okay? Only do that if you're liking the video. But if you've gotten to this point of the video, you probably do, because you probably are enjoying it, because we've covered quite a lot, okay? A little recap, we've covered what has changed, We've also covered the difference between the traditional SMMA and the new way of doing things. We know what we're doing. We know that e-com is definitely the way to go. And we also know how to build a monopoly agency and the importance of doing that if we actually don't want to compete and we want to thrive as an agency. We've also gone ahead and picked our hybrid e-com service, right? So you should have already be aware of the different services you can offer, and you should have already at least started thinking about the service that you can actually offer to these brands. Now we're going to talk about building a team. Why are we building a team now? I will answer that in just a second. But the first thing that you want to understand is the mastery curve. So you need to understand that to master paid ads, right, or direct marketing, email marketing, which are just some of the services that I've talked about, but definitely some of the services you can consider, right? To master any of these services, it's not sufficient to learn about it. You must get your hands dirty to become an expert. Not only does it then take years, but you need clients for this, so you can so you run into this chicken and egg problem, right? Where you need to get experience, but you only get experience with clients, but you need clients to get that experience, and so you don't want to do that, right? Unless you want to be at it for 5 years until you sign that first client. Mastering direct marketing, this also applies because email marketing, sure, it itself can be mastered in a few months, but copywriting is more of an iterative process, right? So the main thing is waiting to master the service you offer is the most detrimental thing you can do to your success as an agency owner, right? And so I see so many agency owners, they go, the first instinct is, okay, I'm going to master Facebook ads, right? I'm going to master this high income skill, right? That's not the high income skill. The high income skill is, the sales, the marketing side of things, building an incredible team, building systems, right? But mastering that service is not the high income skill, right? It's not what you should be doing at first. I'll explain how we do that and why we do that. But how we do that is using the value arbitrage method. So here's a little diagram of the 12 archetypes. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, but essentially these are 12 different kind of like personality traits, right? If you were to call it like that. But essentially you can see here, my point with this is you can see here that different people are cut off for different things, right? And so there's people that want to provide structure in life, right? So we've got caregivers, rulers, artists, right? There's people that are more on a spiritual journey, right? So we've got the innocent, we've got the sage, we've got the explorer. There's people that want to leave a mark. I think entrepreneurs, us, we probably fall into that category. We've got the outlaw, we've got the magician, we've got the hero, okay, who's chasing mastery. Magician is chasing power. And there's also the people that want to connect to others. We've got the lover, we've got the jester, we've got the everyman, right? Belonging, pleasure, intimacy. Now, I think everyone has a bit of everything, right? But there's always an element, a type of an element of our personality that always shines through. The reason why I mention this is because you need to understand that different people are cut out for different roles in the tribe. Okay, for example, as I said, entrepreneurs, we tend to fall under the leave a mark sort of things, right? So you want to understand nature. To achieve mastery of a craft, we embrace our strengths and focus our attention, right? The shoemaker masters shoemaking. The baker, bakery, right? The advertiser, media buying. It's how we move forward as a civilization. And so it's only when I see people try to master so many things, right, that they don't move forward in life, right? Because it's just so ineffective to do that. So do not go against nature. When you try to master a handful of things, do everything yourself and not get help from other experts in their craft. Instead of focusing on a core few things, you experience a lot of friction from nature and the universe, okay? So do not do that. We want to tap into the value arbitrage method. Leave the ego at the door. That is the door that I'm pointing at. Leave the ego at the door and understand that if we are to move forward, we must work with others who are experts in at certain fields and leverage their skills. School and society has us believe the opposite, but this is very important, a realization that most people don't make. Okay, so we need to leverage other people's skills. A good example is Elon Musk, right? How does he accomplish all this stuff? I'm not, smart, the guy's a genius, right? But he also has an incredible team. He's built an incredible culture and people love working for him, right? And so he's got the smartest engineers, and that's how he, accomplishes all this stuff, right? He's not, the in part he is, right? But he's not the brains behind Tesla, right? The actual, car, right? Or the rocket, right? His engineers are, but he leverages other people's skills and abilities to build incredible companies. So that is what we want to do, right? We want to use the value arbitrage method, and what you want to do, okay, is you want to hire the people to deliver the service, right? So if you are offering, let's just say paid ads, right? And you're offering TikTok ads, you hire a TikTok ad specialist as a contractor, as a virtual contractor, right? You pay him part of the fee from the client, and they're part of your team, right? They're not just, some random person who you never speak to and the client never sees. They're part of your team, right? And you're leveraging their abilities to offer the service. We do a lot more stuff, right? We do the sales, we do the branding of the agency, we build the systems, we build the offer, we manage great talent, right? But the service delivery should always be done by someone who's an expert at that specific field. And you might be asking yourself, why hire now, right? Okay, I understand that we need to get someone in our team, but why do we hire now? Doesn't really make much sense, right? You might be thinking, shouldn't hiring a player for our team? Okay, I understand we have to hire someone for our team, but shouldn't this be done like after I have a client? No, okay, and for a number of reasons. So number one, it's going to help you loosen up. I used to be nervous to even jump on interview calls, okay? So I understand that these calls really help you loosen up for client calls when you actually try to sign clients, okay? And it's a lower stake scenario, and it will help you get used to Zoom calls as well, okay? So it really helps you loosen up so that you go into those client calls with much more confidence. Also, it tightens up your messaging. You're going to be presenting your agency to these potential team members. They might also ask you questions, right? This will help you tighten up your offer, okay? So very important. It helps you tighten up your offer, and so that when you go to market, and you can be going to market, you can already start reaching out to clients while you hire these team members that will deliver the service. But this will really help you tighten up your offer. The confidence on going into a sales call will drastically increase because it's helped you loosen up, but also you understand that you know that you have an A player that can actually deliver on this service. So it gives you a different level of confidence, and psychologically it's very powerful because you truly believe in what you're pitching. And the final thing is, you don't want to rush into a hiring decision. My first 3 hires were rushed, and they weren't A players, they were B players. Okay? They were good people, but they're not proactive, they're not relentless, right? They don't, essentially they're not A players, right? By the time you sign a client, it's already too late to start looking for a team member. So you want to do that. You want to do that as you start, because then you have the time to really hire an amazing talent. So that is building the team. We've talked about quite a few things now. The only thing that is left is really, how do we sign these clients? Okay, so I'm going to give you at least one method here that is incredibly powerful, and that you can get started with no money, right? And you can get started right now with it. So the first thing we need to understand is the current landscape again, right? And I want to prelude by having you understand this before I give you the actual system that we're going to be using. So e-com prospects spend their day online. Their media consumption of choice is social media. This is where we can get in front of them without being a nuisance, right? Worldwide economy. There's absolutely no reason as to why our outreach should be limited by location with e-commerce. We can reach out to any e-com business anywhere in the world. And the final thing, this the most vital part of this to understand the method that we're going to be using, the B2P revolution. What I mean by this is business to people. No longer is it business to business or business to consumers, which would be the case with e-commerce, right? It's all transformed into business to people. Okay, so business to business would be agency to a business, right? We would technically be business to business, right? An e-com business would be business to the customer, right? So they're selling products. However, nowadays it's all about business to people. The lines between personal and business are blurred. More than ever, people buy from people they like, respect, and trust. Okay? So understanding this is what I call 1D versus 3D outreach. Most people do one-dimensional outreach. We're going to be doing 3-dimensional outreach. So one-dimensional outreach methods are things like cold call, cold email, which tend to not have a face and persona attached to them. And those are deteriorating because it's very hard to build rapport and trust with these methods because people want to relate to people, right? You want to remember that it's business to people nowadays, right? It's all about business to people. However, the 3D methods are completely different and they take advantage of this business to people current landscape, right? So 3-dimensional methods use social media profile funnels to build rapport and establish authority, okay? We have various touch points with prospects in different forms during the sales journey to close them, right? So it's not just one touch point. It's not just picking up the call, right? Picking up the phone and doing a call. It's not just sending out a cold email and they have absolutely no idea as to who you are, right? It's all about having a profile funnel in place so that they can actually see a face to the outreach and they can engage with other components across the sales journey. So actually getting specific and get into the how to actually do this. So the profile funnel explained. Here's a brief overview. Okay, we're gonna set up your profiles on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to state what you do, who you help, and establish your authority. Okay, so at this point, you know what you do, right? So you're an e-com agency, right? You should have already picked your sub niche, and you should already know your a hybrid e-com service, right? So what you want to do is you want to build your profiles on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to state what you do. Then we're going to post content as well designed for your niche to know that you know what you're talking about. These will be simple value drops, stories, opinions, personal breakthroughs, etc., etc. Okay? Obviously, we're going to match that with outreach and approaching people, right? But once we set up our profiles, we find qualified prospects and we begin messaging them. They can then interact with your profile and content, which has an instant as well as a long tail effect. So once we set up our profiles, we find qualified prospects and we begin messaging them. They can then interact with your profile and content, and this has an instant as well as long tail effect, which is massive, right? Let's just say that you actually approach an e-com business, right, within your specific sub niche on Facebook, right? And so you're not only going to approach them with a message, right? You're not only going to sell them on your service, but then you're going to add them to your profile funnel. So you're going to add them as a friend. Not only are they seeing your message, okay, because you add them as a friend, but they're then going to see your content around that specific sub niche, right? You're going to essentially place yourself as an authority. And as they see your content, that authority, that trust, that rapport is built so that the messages land way better on them, right? And they're much more prone, they're much more warmed up to then take that next step, to jump in on a call with you, to discussing to discussing this in further detail, to discussing selling them on the actual service in further detail. So that is the long tail effect of building a profile funnel on social media. But also the instant effect is if you have a profile funnel which already has authority. So let's just say you've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 months, right? And you've posted content, you've gotten people inside that profile funnel. Now you have that authority so that it also has an instant effect where you send a message or you approach a client in that specific space, right? And they see that authority and they're much more prone to actually follow up and follow through with jumping on a call with you to discuss further and to actually sign on with your agency. So that is a little brief overview, and going a bit further. Basically, one of the main things about the profile funnel, and again, I just want to make sure that you understand what a profile funnel is, right? You've got Facebook, right? And not only are you just reaching out to them, right? But you're posting content, and so you're farming these interactions. You're cultivating these interactions, make sense? So they're seeing your content on their feed, but they're also seeing your messages, okay? So that's one of the components of the profile funnel, but the other component, the more instant component, you've got a profile to you, right? And so they can, if you send them a message on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram, they can also go on your profile and see the type of content you posted, also see your mission, they can see your face, right? And all this stuff is incredibly valuable because it's not just 1D, right? It's not one-dimensional, it's not an email where they don't even see your face. They can see that you're an actual human, right? They can see that you're a person who actually is passionate, who actually knows about the specific sub-niche, right? Vegan brands, for example. And you're not just a fly-by-night opportunist, right? So that is the value of the profile funnel. So most the reason why it's incredibly vital is because it picks up the water falling through the cracks, right? So you need to understand that most prospects won't convert in our first interaction with them, not even through our follow-up, but we're constantly getting in front of them on their feed. The content and the profile, right? Your profile on Facebook, your on LinkedIn, on Instagram, are picking up prospects that fall through the cracks. Secondly, it has a flywheel effect. So at first you have to exert a lot of force, right? But this force has a compounding effect. The more content you have, the easier it is to establish rapport. The stronger your profile is, the easier it is to convert strangers into demo calls. And the final thing is you're building a massive asset, right? You're building an incredible asset because most outreach has very little longevity. With profile funnels, right? For example, because most outreach has very little longevity. If you send an email, that email, especially if you don't follow up, that email is gone, right? If you do a cold call, that cold call is gone, right? With profile funnels, we can get demo calls, strategy sessions, whatever you want to call it, right? Sales calls are booked from content we posted a while back, right? It allows us to duplicate ourselves, and this is the new age. This is the modern way of acquiring clients. I'm not saying email doesn't work, right? If done well with an actual strategy behind it, with automations in place, it does work, right? But this completely free, right? To get started, you can start right now. with your sub niche, posting content, approaching the right people, right? And building these interactions, cultivating these interactions, and having the not only the messages speak for you, right? But your profile with your mission, right? Speak for you. Your content speak for you as well, right? And it's this really, really cool a combination. So things to keep in mind. Iterative, okay? This will be an iterative process where you closely monitor performance. I recommend you start with all 3 platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, okay, at first. But once you see which one is best suited for you and your sub niche, you can narrow down to 2 platforms, just 2 platforms. Our priority, okay? We don't want to explode our ego. We want to explode our bank account, okay? So don't get too caught up in the vanity metrics of, the likes and the comments. Honestly, you could get 1 like, but as long as your prospects are seeing this content, that is incredibly vital, okay? That's incredibly valuable. Much more valuable than someone who's getting thousands of likes, right? But he's not approaching anyone, because these likes are not gonna ever convert to customers, right? Because there's no intent behind those likes. It's just for the intention of getting their ego stroked. Make sense? So keep the main thing. The main thing is signing clients, growing your bank account, and really taking us up a level and leveling up in life, scaling your agency to 10K per month in record-breaking time. And the final thing is, we're not content kings, okay? We are business owners. Creating content is not reserved for, the Gary V's of the world. You don't need fancy equipment or an editing crew. The vast majority of our content will be in written form, right? You can also do videos, but videos, maybe I could see why it could create a bit more friction for most people, but the vast majority of our content will be written. It will be within a specific sub niche, and we don't have to be Gary V, okay, to be able to post content. So guys, that is that for this training. Pretty long one. Hopefully you took a bunch of notes. Hopefully you found it of value. If you did, and you don't want to miss any of the upcoming videos on e-commerce marketing agency, on social media marketing, digital advertising, entrepreneurship, mindset, and much more, go ahead and sub to my channel and hit the little bell icon so you never miss an update. Also, if you haven't liked the video and you got to this point, go ahead and make sure that you make that ugly looking gray like button turn blue. I'd really appreciate it. And the final thing is, if you are ready to get started and really take things up a level with a proven map that has generated incredible results for other people, starting their e-com agency, go ahead and check out the link in the description. That is the link to my application form for my personal mentorship. Look, this is not for everyone. I just thought I'd include it because every time I post a video on my YouTube channel, I get a bunch of emails, DMs of people telling me to offer mentorship. I even comments as well on the YouTube video. So I'll just include it in the video. If you're interested in that, go ahead and check out the link in the description. It will be the first link in there. All you gotta do is you gotta book in a call, schedule in a call, so you can jump with me and my team, and we can see if you'd be a good fit for it. And if you are, then we can get right into scaling your agency to a 10K a month mark in record-breaking time. And so with that being said, hope everything is going well in your journey, and I'll see you